are joined now on the phone by one of my best friends, James Rosen, a guy he's sort of a Renaissance man. I mean, he's an on-air correspondent at the Fox News Channel, of course, you know that. He is an artist of note. I mean, he does these incredible sketches and a really prolific writer. In fact, very prolific. If you've read his book on John Mitchell. Fascinating book.
Are you setting up a proposal of some kind?
No,
I mean, you're talking this guy up like he's the second coming for crying out loud.
We have a bromance. There's just no doubt about it.
Clearly. And I'm starting to get a little jealous.
I adore James, and I think
he never talks about me like this,
I don't want to put words
James.
in his mouth, but I think he adores me as well.
I think this falls properly, Brian, under the category of unrequited bromance. But that's fine.
No mutual bromance here.
No, I see how it is.
The deepest cut of all.
Love. Texas-sized love.
All right, so look, you have written an article for Foreign Policy Magazine. See, I'm telling you, Renaissance guy, Foreign Policy Magazine. And you make a point that I've been making on the show, and I want you to sort of expand upon it. You talk about Richard Nixon and his dealings with the Soviets back in the day, and how he always wanted to leave them just wondering, was the President of the United States just a little crazy? Was he like someone who would just do anything to win in his battle against in the Cold War?
That's right, and Richard Nixon had observed the Soviets very close up at hand, even when he was a vice president under Eisenhower, and he had his famous kitchen debate with with Khrushchev, I should say, and Brezhnev was standing right behind Khrushchev. And then when he becomes president, the president had heard of something called the madman theory, the idea that you would encourage your adversary to believe that you might be unstable, that you might even be willing to do anything, and in a Cold War context, that meant that you might be willing, as commander-in-chief, to escalate a localized conventional military encounters such as the Vietnam War to the nuclear level. The lessons that I think this might have for the current crisis with Ukraine, where President Obama is facing off against President Putin of the Russian Federation, is that the President and Secretary of State Kerry have at all times striven across various continents to reassure President Putin that they are reasonable men, that they can talk this over. And I think that had they been willing from the outset to communicate a slight greater bit of erraticism in their decision-making, it might have given Putin more pause.
That's very interesting.
So James Rosen, what you're saying is that when he was criticized so much back in 1984, President Reagan, when he said this...
My fellow Americans, I'm pleased to tell you today that I've signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes.
So that was clearly a joke, but it's possible that over in the Soviet Union, they saw this and thought, well, hold on a minute, this guy's crazy.
Right, except for the humorous context. And what Nixon did to further this idea in the mind of the Soviets is and we have the Nixon tapes, and we quote from them in this article that you can read on foreignpolicy.com. My co-author and I should point out, Luke Nichters, an associate professor of history at Texas A&M University. Nixon was actually telling Kissinger on the eve of his own meetings with the Soviets, Henry, I want you to tell them that I'll use the nuclear weapon. And the idea was sort of a good cop, bad cop routine where Kissinger said that he would go and tell the Soviets, listen, Mr. Ambassador, I can't control him, meaning Nixon. The more you and I do here in the Kremlin away from Nixon, the better, if you get my drift.
It's like when you're buying a car. It's like, I'd love to give you this deal, but then my boss, he's going to get it.
Yeah.
Our guest is James Rosen, chief Washington correspondent for Fox News and author of The Strong Man, John Mitchell, and the Secrets of Watergate. So, I mean, listen, you're not in the business of giving advice to the administration, but, I mean, what do you think they need to do here to be able to actually make a difference? Because it seems like Putin is going to keep, what do they say, keep stabbing until you hit steel?
Right. I mean, the problem is that the administration has already effectively telegraphed how little it is willing to do in order to stave off a broader invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces. And the really dangerous news that we've gotten just yesterday, and I was reporting on this for Fox News, was that the Defense Department has apparently briefed members of Congress on what appears to be a troop surge of Russian troops to the border with Ukraine. We already understood there to be about 30,000 Russian forces massed at various points along the border with Ukraine, and that would be worrisome enough. But now that number is apparently escalated to 80,000, according to our sources at Fox News.
Wow.
And as the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO told our camera after he got out of a closed-door briefing with the House Armed Services Committee yesterday, that kind of deployment of forces by the Russians, 80,000 troops, and in the composition and configurations that we're seeing, is not consistent with merely doing exercises, as the Russians claim. And in fact, the Defense Department yesterday in their own news conference said, we haven't seen any evidence of exercises. It's only consistent with a potential invasion of a broader nature into eastern Ukraine.
Well, I'm fascinated by this idea that you need to be looking a little unstable. I mean, I think when the Russians looked at like George W. Bush, they had to wonder. Is this guy a cowboy? If we do something, what's his reaction going to be? He might just take us on.
Right, and that's exactly the kind of thinking that most analysts attribute to the late Muammar Gaddafi when he decided, when he was still in power in Libya, to give up all of his weapons of mass destruction and all of his and to come clean with all of those systems and turn them over to international inspection, because he had seen Bush invade Iraq. And when you hear the kind of declarative statements that Bush was prone to making on the world stage, such as "you're either with us or against us," well, Gaddafi made a calculation at that time. And Richard Nixon, towards the end of his, or I should say, after his presidency in 1985, he was asked, "Who was the most brilliant world leader you ever saw?" And he said Khrushchev. And he said, why? He said, because he scared the hell out of people.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, given that, what you're saying is, in most, and Liz, I know you talk to a lot of people at the State Department, mostly off the record, my guess is. I'm guessing that their assessment of the president basically saying, well, no one wants to go back to the Cold War, and this is 19th century thinking, and this isn't how we do things here in the 21st century. That's pretty much having little effect at all on Vladimir Putin and the people who are supporting him in Russia.
The centerpiece of our response to the Crimean invasion and annexation by Russia has been sanctions, limited sanctions on principally senior officials and cronies of Vladimir Putin and one major bank. And yesterday, by way of scoffing at these measures, Putin announced that he is developing his own credit card system inside Russia to counter the moves by Visa and MasterCard, which, in response to the U.S. sanctions against that big Russian bank, have announced they have to deny their services to the clients of that bank. So Putin said, well, in essence, he actually said the words, too bad. They're blocking themselves off from a very profitable market, and we will start our own credit card system here in Russia. So he is making a truly extraordinary 21st century challenge to the international order, and it remains to be seen whether the very calibrated and mostly reactive response of the Obama administration and our European allies will be sufficient to counter it.
All right. Very quickly, I noticed this morning you're reporting on some special reporting that's going to be done at Fox News about the Internet.
That's right. Tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Fox News has a big special called Surrendering America. I only contributed one story to it, and my story is about the decision recently announced by the Department of Commerce on a Friday that it is intending to cede control that the Department of Commerce currently has and has had for years over something called ICANN. That's the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. It's a Los Angeles-based nonprofit corporation. The Department of Commerce has a contract that effectively controls it. And ICANN has basically announced, or the Department of Commerce has said, ICANN, we want you to come up with a new governing structure that doesn't have U.S. control over you. ICANN gives out the .coms, the .govs, and the other sort of gibberish that we see at the back end of Internet addresses. It's hugely important.
Yeah.
The Commerce Department says they won't accept a situation where another government or set of governments like Russia and China could have control over the Internet. But nonetheless, it's of great concern to a lot of people. You can read and hear more about it, I should say, 10 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, Fox News Channel. It's part of this big special that examines whether the United States is surrendering global leadership.
Thank you so much, James Rosen. Great stuff.
Thank you, guys. Always a pleasure.
That Russian credit card, they're going to call it Visa.
Visa.
Or maybe Russian Express. Don't leave home without it, or we'll send you to Siberia.
It's Siberia. All right, James, thank you.